Well, folks, this is Larry Rolla here with my pal Larry Mazza, back by popular demand. How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing great. I thank you for having me back, and I want to thank everybody that enjoyed the show. And if they ask me to come back, that's humbling and it's an honor. But thank you.
Before we get into anything, I didn't know this. I didn't know this last time we spoke, but I found this out by accident. I trained horses for two friends of mine, Don and Dina. Dina, who
Mhm.
I think you know,
Very
has
well.
right has two brothers, Pete and Joe,
Yes.
and they were on. You were their coach, basketball coach, or they were in your
Yep.
class or something,
Yep.
along with your brother Joe.
Yes.
And they told me that their father Pete was very good friends with your father, who was both were firemen.
Yes. Yes.
And and then they said something that was funny, and I remember in your book, reading your book. And by the way, we're going to get into this book. This is great. I'm starting to read it again. We're going to put a picture of it up later. But
Thank you.
uh, I think in the book, if I can remember, in 1983, you started your own gambling business, and from what I was told, that when you were coaching these kids, and they were 12, 13 years old, 14, after class, you gave them football tickets to go out. And so
Yeah.
I says to
Well,
Pete, I says, did you bring the money back? He said, yeah. I says, did you ever win? He says, yeah, once in a while we won. So
yeah.
you
Well,
really
let me say this. I'd like to think they were a little bit older, because when I was coaching, I was probably around 18. So they were more like 15 or 16, I think. But it is true. We did the football tickets. This they didn't know. And I'm not going to mention too many names. There's a lot of good fathers out there. First of all, their father, Pete, was a man's man. Loved them just like my father. They were both good men, both firemen, like you said, both dedicated lots of time to the youth, to the baseball teams and basketball teams. And his father was a hell of a good manager, baseball manager. He knew baseball well. I think he was a semi-pro player at one point. Uh, Petey, I think, made it to the Royal Organization, if I remember right. I don't know how
did.
long he stayed there. Joey, I believe, is in the horse business today, training, or might have been in it and maybe
I,
retired.
I'm going to get into that
Okay,
right.
that's good. But here, this is a funny thing. So I always had a little shady side to me. We had such a good organization. The, I mean, the fans would come to watch. There was referees, coach, games almost every night. So we were a little old, like I said, 18. I was putting point spreads on the games. And the fellow coaches and friends and maybe even parents were betting a little bit on these games. Not widespread, not obnoxiously disrespectful, or just little making it interesting type of thing. And yeah, it's funny. They brought back some memories. That's why I'm laughing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dina, she was a good athlete too. I remember her father at the track in the back of the high school, pushing her to go faster while she was doing her track routine around the track. And he did not let up on her. I mean, I felt a little bad, but he was going to get the best out of her if she could make the Olympics or what. Beautiful girl. Turned out to be a hell of a lady. So give them all my best, warmest regards.
I will. Dina, I hope I get this right. She finished in second place to some girl that come from very high altitudes or something in
Yeah.
either the tryouts for the Olympics or something like that. But when I was training their horses at the farm, they would come down. I'd jog a horse for 5 miles, and she'd run right alongside me on the dirt track for five
Unbelievable.
miles. And when we come back, she'd be like she just sat down the whole time. She wasn't even breathing hard or nothing. It was unbelievable. And every night every night, because they had a big house down in South Jersey, right near the training farm. So
Mhm.
when the weather was bad, I'd stay over their house, and it made no difference what the weather was. She would go out and jog 5, 6, 7 miles in a pitch black all by herself. She was addicted to that. She would never stop. And then when we did
Right.
the hyperbaric, I mean the hypoxic stall, I'm gonna get into that now. But first, I want to tell you about Joe. When Joe left Brooklyn, he went to a horse sale with his sister. The first horse he bought was for $2,000, and it was a horse called Autistic Fella.
Wow.
And Autistic Fella, let's see, he gave it to oh God, he gave Steve Elliott trained him, and Catello Manzi drove him, and he won the Meadowlands Pace for $1 million,
No, I think I remember that story.
and he had the whole all of Brooklyn in the winner's circle. It was the largest winner's
Yes.
circle picture in the history of racing. He had everybody there.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think I was in the can. I think I was doing my time about then.
you had a lot of representation from
Yeah,
Brooklyn. They
I
had
bet.
they had everybody there, and then the horse went on. I think he won $2 or $3 million. Then he sent the horse to Australia, and he for breeding. He made a few million there, and then he said. Then the horse came back to this country, and now he's retired on his farm. So it's funny. He wants to come on the podcast. I was going to try to figure out how to get both of you on at the same time, but I'm learning I'm learning how to do this because Tom, the guy that was just on the phone with
Yeah,
me to make sure I didn't screw up, he's not available all the time because he does all that kind of work in his other business.
right.
Joe's going to come on maybe next week, and he's going to tell his story from being a little wise guy in Brooklyn to being a prominent horse owner that made millions, $4 or $5 million with the first horse he ever bought. And he wants to come on and tell that story. So he's going to come on maybe next week when Tom's available. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't I know you I don't know how you do it. You've been on more podcasts. I was trying to figure out during the week what we should talk about. And no matter how many years I go back, you've been on more podcasts than anybody in the history of podcasts. And
Is
you
that?
don't turn anybody down, which is very, very nice.
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
lot of them you got their podcast going really good because you came on, and then you keep coming on. You just don't ever turn anybody down.
Well, I, it's you know what I get upset at like professional ball players that won't sign autographs for kids. Uh, and I see it all the time when I go to games, and it just bothers me. Or I'll see somebody that's disrespectful when somebody's looking up to them or wants to talk to them, and I just don't want to be that guy. You know, and sometimes my wife says you got to turn them down once in a while, and I have a hard time doing that. I still sign every single book that I sell. That being said, if Terrence Winter finalizes a deal that he's working on with a couple of heavyweight networks, I believe the book sales are going to be really, really too high for me to sign every one. So I'm going to have to figure that out. But they want to bring Mob TV along with my story, which is a nice thing because that could be a wonderful 5, 6, 7, 8 years of doing things like aside from my story, the talk show that we were doing. But yeah, it's I do, and I appreciate because you remember the honeymooners?
Sure.
Okay, could you recite them like I can? There's a whole bunch of ones that I never forgot. Okay,
Well, I
there's
think they only did about 12 of them, but
yeah, 26 or something. But there's a line that Ralph Cramden says when he thinks he just hit the big lottery. Of course, he didn't hit it. He always thinks he's winning money or something. And he told Norton, "You're going to meet the same people on the way up that you're going to meet on the way down.
Yeah.
So think about it. It's nice. I think it's nicer to be nice and giving, and you know what? Maybe it's part of, I don't want to say, God, my penance or redemption. Did a lot of bad things. People look at you and they think, oh, he's a horrible hitman. He's this, he's that. Once they get to know you or me, they can see there's another side, a human side to all this.
Yeah.
I
I get asked that question a lot, and I think about it a lot. And you said it a lot more elegant than I could possibly say it in my book. I just answer that same question or have the same feeling by, uh, I'm just trying to get to heaven. So, but you
Yeah,
say,
but that's nice. That's very nice. No, listen, sometimes shorter is sweeter. That's a very nice way to say it. Yep.
yeah.
Good. Well,
Tell the people, tell them how to get to, because last time we didn't talk about it. Naturally, we're going to put the book. You guys out there that are listening, you got to get this book. We're going to put a picture on it when Tom edits it. But you got to get this book. It's called The Life. It's an unbelievable book. In fact, when I met with Pileggi 2 or 3 times about my thing, we talked about you a little bit, and he did say that this book here was the ultimate mob book, and it's completely different than all the other ones. In fact, if you didn't have your deal, and I'm glad that you do, and I'm hoping for you that it works, I could go page by page, and it would take forever. But we could do about 3,000 podcasts. Every sentence I could ask you a question about. And,
yeah. Well, take some highlights. Do that. We'll do that the next one. Make some notes, stuff.
Well, I have one or two. I remember. I'm trying to remember because I read the book once, but that was a while ago. And quite honestly, even if I read it this morning, I'd forget anyway. But I remember in the book that you said, and I was surprised to read it, and I want to ask you about that too, about how many people you know, because in my memory, I think probably 99% of the mob, every family, were gamblers. Most of them sick, degenerate gamblers. And when I read that part in the book where you started you had your own crew, and the gambling thing was going pretty good. And then I think in the next chapter or down further, you says that when Greg's son and himself, they they beat some of your guys, your partners, out of money.
Yeah.
How
well, you know what? That's one of the first red flags that I should have, and I was a little open mouthed about that. My dissatisfaction or not liking that happening to us. I was a kid. You're looking maybe 21, 22. I was only around a few years, and we were getting big. And there was a big amount of money that we were going to be getting, like 30,000, and we earned it. It was all right to have. And how I want to split it up with my partners is my business. But the greed and the dictatorship of the life, my boss blamed it on his boss, Scappy, the captain. He says, Larry's close to us. He should get his 10. But those other two shouldn't get 10 each. Now, these are guys that I'm bringing in with me. They're working with me, earning the money, and they split that other 20. And when I told Greg, it's one of the few times he belittled me, not in front of anybody. He says, you do what I tell you to do. This is the way Scappy wants it. He blames Scappy. He says, it's the way this life is. You're a partner. They're not. I didn't like it. And yes. And afterwards, later on, I learned the lesson. I never let them know exactly how much we won. I wasn't honest anymore. I learned to be like them. And if we won 30,000, I says we won 12. And this went on for years now, and when we lost, if I needed money, I had to borrow on points. So it's not like they were financing it for free. So, yeah. But then, there's a whole bunch of things. And look, every time I say a bad thing, I could say a few good things too about the camaraderie. And we did have each other's backs. And Gregory and I, to this day, still talk. I think you'll have him on this show soon if you'd like, Greg Jr. I think it'd be a good show. He's going to
I
start.
thought he was in jail. He got out.
Well, after 33 years, about half of that in solitary confinement. He had developed some cancer, and he had some numerous operations, and he fit the bill for, what do they call it? Mercy release, or there's another word they use for it. I can't think of it right now. Compassionate release. Yes, compassionate release. He was more than 2/3 of his sentence in. He had 33 of the 60 years or whatever it was. He was over 65, and he was, I don't know if it's deathly ill, but very ill. So the first judge who wanted to let him out sooner, they put an appeal in that held him in jail, in prison. But this time around, with the compassionate release law, he was still smart, the judge. It was the same judge, and he felt wronged by his own people because he felt Gregory should have got out, because he tried to help a little bit with that World Trade Center bombing. He was next to the terrorists that did it, and he tried to help, and the judge said if they would have listened to him a little more, that could have been avoided. So anyway, it's a whole nother story. I'll let him tell you that someday. But now this judge, on a Friday afternoon at 5:00, when all the prosecutors are off, he orders the jail to release Greg Jr. immediately, right this second. So they had no time to appeal it. And once he gets out, it's harder to appeal and put him back in. They could have put a stay, extension, whatever, and but once he was out, they couldn't do it. And he told me the story. He says, now they come to my cell at 5:00. They say, you're leaving. I said, I don't want to go. I didn't know where to go. I had nobody. I said, where am I going to go? He's asking him, could he wait till Monday so he has a few people to pick him up? But they wound up, he had a girlfriend that came to Iowa where he was and set him up with herself in an apartment, and he worked his way back. Now he's in Florida with his family.
Is it near you? Any place near you? Or?
Not too close. Not too close. He's about. He's on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. So we're about a good 3 hours away. But his first probation officer didn't want him leaving anywhere, staying right in that little circle where he was. Anytime any old friends or any contact at all, and she said, especially Larry Mazza, I said, you make sure you tell me in advance. Don't let me hear you guys are getting together or anything like that. So he was with her for about a year. Then she moved on. He's got a new guy, very regular guy, normal, says you did your time, don't get in any trouble. And he cleared him to see old friends if he wants, as long as, nothing comes of it. So he's starting to get his feet back on the ground. Very hard after all those years in.
Yeah.
Comes
what
home.
About health-wise, is he getting better?
He's okay now because he could get treatment. He could eat the right foods. He could take medicine. He could take care of himself. He still walks a lot, exercises. He's 72. So who's going to hire a 72-year-old guy that has nothing in his, So he's doing menial jobs here and there. But again, he's got friends and family that are helping out. So,
did you ever have him on your show?
No, I don't have a show yet. I take it back. The mob show, we did film him. Here's what happened. Because he couldn't leave the state and come to the West Coast, we had to bring the camera crew there. We took a local camera crew, and I filmed him for 2 straight days, and I filmed his sister, Debbie, too. Fantastic footage. They're holding it. They're holding it back. They were hoping that he had either a book or a documentary where it could tie in with that. He's starting to get a documentary. That's why I said he'll be coming out again on shows because he has something to promote. And we have the footage. It's not a problem, but I think it's a little too technical for me. But my producer, I got to listen to what he says. We had the seating backwards. And we did that for a reason. On my show, I was on one side, all the guests were on the other. Because where he had the skin cancer taken out, he has a better side now. And I did that for him. And I don't think it was that big of a deal. And Debbie was very emotional, and she kept moving up in the seat, and I guess they want you to sit a little more still when you're doing these. So then they can edit it and fix it up, but they may just do it again. But we do. It was a great interview. And he got paid well for that. Joe paid him for his life rights, and then released him so he could do this documentary because somebody else wants to do it. So I'm lucky with the guy I have, Joe Paletto. He's very fair. He's not like this egotistical, greedy guy. As a matter of fact, he's so successful. I think he's just doing this as a hobby right now. And he really wants mine to get done. I think that'll be his trophy in life at this point.
I think in your book you wrote a bit about him. Didn't he open up a club or something on Staten
Yes.
Island? And it was a pretty successful club, but I think if I remember right, they were all coked up and crazy.
Yeah. Yep. And
it
was the name of the club was called On the Rocks. It's, like a drink on the rocks. But then a slang term for cocaine was like a rock or something. So they were certainly on the rocks both ways. They were definitely using a lot of, it was more, it was like a movie out of the 80s, the Cocaine Cowboys, Studio 54. This was the era. And that's what they got into. They enjoyed using it. They definitely enjoyed selling it then, which was a rule that was being broken. But they did it. And, I was on a podcast I did, more than just one. I say a very important thing in all walks of life, but especially ours, is timing. Things happen at certain times for a reason. Guys become made guys. Timing. Then they become captains. They're brought up to be a captain because, they might not even be deserving of it, but their captain is going to prison. So you get nominated to sit in his position until he comes home. A lot of times he never comes home. You may wind up in a business with someone for timing. If I was what the Colombo family needed at one point because they weren't successful in the gambling business. They had numbers. They couldn't expand it. They weren't doing horses. And I was able to just expand that and blow it up. That now I had other parts of the family giving me their business. Scappy took me to see, you probably remember the name, Joe Piney. Joe Piney was a consigliere of the Gambino family for many, many years. I went to his cafe in Manhattan, Alphabet City, and was sitting there, and I had impressed this guy enough that he had several of his bookmakers turn their action into us. There had to be two heavyweight bosses to allow that. Then I would go see him on my own, just once every month to check in and make sure everybody's happy. So if it wasn't for, I couldn't just go in there on my own, but if the Colombo family had somebody already.
They give you that respect because of Greg, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. He would take me places and introduce me as his nephew. And they would just open the doors. Whatever you need, whatever you want. How can we help? So, definitely timing.
I think I read too, because I did this when I had the gambling boat, the Sun Cruise, with that Greek guy Gus who got killed. But he was opening up a fleet of 15, 16 gambling boats, and I was going to have the gambling concession on all the boats, but he was the bad guy. He never paid anybody. There were a couple of guys come in looking for him.
Did he get killed down in Florida?
Yeah, he got killed. I told him. I says, listen. I says,
I know the story.
Some guys that come looking for you. You better pay them or get a BMW with bulletproof windows. They're the only car that you can buy right now.
Yeah.
So he did. He bought a BMW rather than pay them, and he was a very wealthy guy. Rather than pay him, he bought a BMW with bulletproof windows. And then one day he left the ship when we came in about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. He was on route Federal Highway, I think. Or
US 1.
Yeah, and they stopped for a light, and a car pulled next to him. A beautiful girl pushed the window down, and she put a hand out like, put your window down. He put his window down, and that was the end of him.
Wow.
and that's how he got killed.
Yeah.
But
Well,
when
they
I
had some, I was
when
going
I
to say they had a sun cruise right in the area I am too, Cape Canaveral.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's a. Do you know? I'm not going to get into it now, but do you know I went down there and that guy has a. It wasn't Gus. It's another guy, and he has a gigantic boat. But the old boat that he had, I was going to buy it, and I made a deal. I probably get myself in trouble. Maybe not. I was going to buy it. I come down. He wanted $7 million. So we made the deal. I had all the people to run it. I had everything ready. And when we sat down, I came there with a briefcase and it was all cash. And
Wow.
the attorney says, we can take the cash, but I'm going to have to declare it. And then that ended. That
Oh
ended.
boy. Well,
So
you know what's funny? There was two ships after the Sun Cruise. One was a Sterling, and one was Liquid or something. Liquid Vegas. Liquid Vegas, I believe. Both of the owners of that ship, through some guys that worked on the ship, called me in to help them enhance their sports business. I gave them about probably a dozen things right off the bat that they needed to do to correct it. And I had their ear. Just as they were waiting for more, I says, now, if you want me to continue with the other 100, I want a contract. Tell me what I'm going to be doing here and what my position is. And the bottom line was they couldn't make some, they were going to hire me. They couldn't make some of the changes that I said they needed to do to make it successful. The boat wasn't getting out till like 7:30. I said, that means the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, all those games started already. Then the boat comes in, like say on a Monday Night Football. You got the boat coming in at 12 o'clock. The games sometimes were still going on back then. Remember, they were real long games. I said, these people now, some of them are going to drive back to Orlando. Then they got to come back. I said, you got to have to figure out a way. And I said, do it with an offshore account like Costa Rica, where people can meet an agent and exchange the monies, where they don't have to come back. You know, they thought that was a gray area they were afraid of. But I gave them a bunch of ideas, but they couldn't change the time of the ship. I said, you'll never be successful.
why couldn't they change the time?
Because people getting out of work, and then it takes a couple of hours to get out, or not a couple of hours, maybe an hour to get out the 3 miles. I don't know. But basically, they were worried about the workers that couldn't come home from work.
We went one trip in the afternoon, one trip at night. And just like you, I gave everybody that came in, I had a guy stand there with football tickets and
Right.
made him buy,
Oh,
and handed
yeah.
everybody a football ticket.
Yeah.
You know how I got all the business? Because at that time there were 2 or 3 other gambling ships right around that area. But they all had a $500 limit. You can only bet up to 500.
Right. Right.
And I put an ad in all the newspapers, including the Chinese newspaper, that we will take any bet, any size, any time, any place, whatever. Just go. And probably 70-80% of the people that came were Chinese, and they bet
Yes.
like crazy.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
the other guy that was a big better with me was the guy who owned the Miami Dolphins.
Izenga.
His son. His son was
Wayne Izenga, right?
no, it
They own,
wasn't.
not
No,
Blockbuster, not the Blockbuster guy.
no. What the hell was his name?
I thought it was Wayne Hazienga or something.
No, the guy who owned the Miami Dolphins that was going to build a stadium, a new stadium. So I forgot.
All right.
But anyway, he bet 20-30,000 a game. That guy. Um, uh, so I got
Yeah.
I was doing very, very well. And then we had we pulled a couple of tricks on that guy. You got the guy who came because they had all the slot machines. The guy
Yeah.
who and regulated whatever he did to the
Yes.
slot
Yes.
machines. We give him a couple of thousand, and he'd say, "Okay, on the second floor, the 2 poker machines on the end. I can't tell you when, but it's going to be in the next maybe 15, 20 pulls. You'll hit the jackpot." So he used to do that for me, and then there was a few things that there was
Yeah.
few, but the key was get the Chinese people on and give them unlimited betting.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about that was I knew about it. I never, ever, ever talked about it. Um, but I remember it was in your book, and when it was in your book, and you named the names and everything else. I never talked about this until just now. One of the rules in that your past life was you
Hmm.
go out with one of your members' daughters, anything like that.
Right.
And I knew of two major guys that broke that rule.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then when in the book I saw another one, and I couldn't believe it because I was not aware of that about John.
Yep.
Uh, and I didn't
Yep.
know that. And
Yeah. Well, and and I spoke to Sammy later on after that, and he confirmed it and made it very, very, you know,
that
that
was
it's not,
unbelievable. I mean,
it's
that
totally true. And Johnny Alight, who is John Jr.'s right hand man, knows firsthand also. So there's people that have talking about it, that were there and know. And somebody said too that they had a kid together that you just look at the face and you know, which is but yeah, a lot more of that went on. As a matter of fact, there was another situation in our crew. One of the guys went away to prison. One of the other crew members wound up sleeping with the wife, and the guy in jail had the right. He demanded satisfaction. This is and he was told to forget it, let it go,
wow.
because the guy that was doing it, his father was very close to Greg. And that's what I mean. It's hypocritical. You can't decide when to give a pass if you're going to start breaking rules. But that's a great point. But I want to tell one more thing about the football tickets. You'll love this idea. What I did with the tickets too, I told people, do not throw out your stub. You put it in this thing, and at the end of the season or the end of the month or whatever it was, depending if it was a bar, if it was like on your ship, on a ship like that, where you can probably have many, 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 many thousands of numbers, I'll say you're going to win a motorcycle, or draw for a motorcycle or something. So they felt like every $10 they put in,
Yeah.
at least they had a raffle. So I thought that was a
Well,
good idea.
in all the months that we did it, in all the months that we did it, nobody ever won. Not one person ever won. But they would
I
all
had a
play
few.
3, 4, 5 games, but nobody ever won. It was
Yeah.
just you could take that money, put it in
It's
your
tough.
pocket, never
Listen
have
to
to
this.
work.
When I had the pool room, now this is later on, I'm not a kid anymore. I had the pool room, I had to be 26, 27. It was just before the war started. So I had the pool room for about 2, 3 years, whatever it was. And we were still doing the sheets. And this little kid comes in with his mother and father. He had a ticket, a $2 ticket. He won $800. He must have picked 12 teams or something, or 8 teams, whatever the odds were. And he brought his mother and father, because they thought maybe I wouldn't pay him. But I enjoyed paying him. I just felt in the back of my head, we have a degenerate gambler now. He thinks it's easy.
You know what
I
I
don't
don't
even think I don't
understand?
even know how he got the ticket.
I stopped gambling in 1971. I was forced to stop because I anyway. Um, I can't understand how good bettors, legitimate smart guys, keep betting parlays, and I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I think I don't understand
Well,
it.
being in the bookmaking game, you're right. You're right. It's hard enough to pick one side, just to with the point spread and everything. But there's a crew that had dealt with me for many, many years, and they had a system. They would bet. Take baseball, for instance. The road team. If the road team was favored, like say 130, the Yankees over Detroit, they would take the Yankees and over, or Detroit, the other team, and under. The home dog, they would bet under. And they would bet both of those. Big numbers with a lot of different offices. Somehow they zeroed in on a percentage that a road favorite wins, the game goes over, or the road dog stays under. And they won money. I mean, nothing lasts forever. Then the line maker adjusts it a little bit and figures it out. Then there was other guys that would bet like various combinations of tennis and golf and stuff. They had their little you know. But yeah, it's tough to pick parlays. Tough.
Who did
But
you
yeah,
like Sunday? Who did you like in Sunday's
you
game?
know, a perfect segue. I was just going to tell you. Here's what is becoming a problem for the houses today. And if you look back at the past several Super Bowls, the point spread is too strong. It's so close to the spread that remember the old teaser bets? You couldn't lose no matter what you took. This year, last year, the year before, you could check what if you bet yesterday, Kansas City and over, Kansas City and under, San Fran and over, San Fran and under, Kansas City, whatever you bet won. That's a tough thing for a bookmaker to overcome. And then you get the guys that bet three-way. I saw them with guys that I consult with right now, betting Kansas City plus 10 or 11, 49ers plus 9 or 10, and under or over. They all won. There's a 4-team teaser where you get 13 points. You bet over, under Kansas City. But to answer your question, I know how hard it is to go against that kid. I hear it all the time, but I'm not a sucker. I'm not the public. I don't. That's not going to make me bet him. I thought Frisco had the better team. I took the under. I hit that, but I lost the game. I took San Fran and I took under. The one thing I touted and I told everybody, and I'm almost prophetic for this. I'm going to take a little pat on my back. I said, if I lose, it's going to be because of the coaching. I said, because the one blaring, whatever the word is, difference is that guy, Andy Reid, has been around a long time. He's a superstar coach. And Shanahan, as good as he is, he's still working his way up, and he can't get over the hump. And Reid is smart enough to hire that defensive coordinator that made Kansas City go from a laughingstock defense to a very respected defense now. But if they hit that extra point, they may win.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? But that's life. Yeah.
I haven't made a football. I haven't made any sports bet since 1970. But I was very, very close to betting $1,000 on San Francisco, and I didn't. I could.
Yeah. So
I turned it on 10 minutes after it started. They were up by 10 points. I says I should have did it, but then that evaporated.
Yeah, it changes quick. And the other thing I said, these people that say, Mahomes never loses, you can't go against them. All right. So then why don't you just mortgage the house? Why don't you bet him right now for next year's Super Bowl? What are you waiting for? Yeah. It's easy to say that afterwards. Like Tom Brady, people forget that. Yeah, I'm not knocking him. The guy, obviously, who am I to say anything about him? But he did lose twice to the Giants. Let's not forget that. You said the same thing that year. You can't go against him. And 2 of the games that he won, he had nothing to do with the win. The interception, when Seattle threw the interception at the 1-yard line with no time left, I mean, come on. So the opposing coach was the MVP, not Tom Brady. And the very next year, against Atlanta, when Atlanta had a 20-point lead with 4 minutes to go, and they gave up 3 touchdowns. And they had the ball. One more first down. Instead of running the ball, they throw it. They get a holding penalty. Then they throw again, an interception. Bing, 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 and it turns around. So,
do you still do all that work and all that studying that you did last time we spoke about?
Yeah.
You still do all of that?
Yes. I had a meeting with some guys this year that I send my picks to every week. They're all in the game. They're all in the business. They're still, whether they're booking or gambling, whatever they're doing, offshore, half of it is legal now. And I send them a chart. I've got comments back. I've never seen you on fire like this. I mean, really, I was giving them dogs that were winning out. And here's what happened. I usually stop about November because the line gets real tight. But what I did this year, I re-upped all my numbers. I saw who the injuries were. I saw who the teams that were underachieving. I saw teams that were doing better. I saw quarterbacks that were starting to make a name for themselves, coming of age, whatever. And I redid all the figures. And I ended the season in one of my best bets was Washington to make the Final Four. I hit that. That was a nice one because he got some odds. I got like 4-1 on that. I bet it early enough in the season. I hit the Heisman Trophy winner. Uh, there were a few others. I did tout against Georgia. I liked Alabama. The only bad one I had was when Alabama. Who beat Alabama?
I don't know.
Michigan. Because yeah, when Alabama got in, I thought they were going to be the team to destroy Harbaugh and Michigan's hopes. So that was one of my losers, Alabama in that game.
Do you have a touting service? Or do you are you in that business?
I am not, but what I do, like I said, I have a small circle of people that remember me from the old days, and they stay in touch, and we have arrangements. And Joe Paletto is working on a website for me now. That's my producer because he's one of the guys I send the games to, and he says we have to do something. We got to do something, and he's a marketing guru. So I would think maybe probably by next season he may have it done. I think way before that because he was talking to me about baseball, and yeah, and it'll be. I don't know what his plan is. You know, he has the wherewithal, he has the marketing, he has everything you need to do it, and he'll just put my plays out there.
How the hell do you find the time to do all that research for every? How do you and the gym
It's
and the
I have my gym. Early on, when I first came home, I didn't have as much time because I was training everybody. I was doing all the classes. Now, as I'm older, I have other trainers using my gym. I don't do 6 kickboxing classes a week anymore. There are karate classes. There's MMA, but I don't do them. I'm pretty much retired from that. I'll play around. I'll advise if somebody asks. And I still train some people, but I prefer to work out myself, get myself going, run the place, make sure it's all in line. And then I come home, I have 3 or 4 hours every day. I do it. I go back to the gym at the end of the day. I find time for it. And it's basically June and July that I'm really up against it because I'm getting all the information from the colleges. And if I was more computer literate and I was ready to have somebody teach me a program to help me, but I keep saying, no, don't let me do it my way. But that would probably help. So,
well, why don't you tell the people, my people here that are listening, how you met? Because if they get the book, they're going to see you on the front page with De Niro and with Nicholas
yeah.
Pileggi. How'd you meet these guys and get parts in these movies?
Yeah. Well, what happened? I'd written the book, and right off the bat, it was pretty much, I'm not going to say it caught wildfire, but people liked it. It got out into circles, and there were cops that were on my case, ex-detectives that were working with the FBI task force that retired and became Robert De Niro's personal security service. He's right in the building with him. So when he was working on The Irishman, as you most people know, that took like 11 or 12 years to do. They just kept putting it on the back burner, and it took a long time. So throughout all those years, somewhere along the way, he asked one of the cops that's friendly with me, Bob. He actually wrote the foreword to my book. The only part I didn't write because I didn't want to describe myself. I thought somebody else should do that. Anyway, he asked him if he knew anybody from the old life that would consider talking to him about how things happen in the street. He wanted it to be authentic, The Irishman. So 3 of the officers, and like I laugh about it in one way. It's nice. It's like it's not. They said Larry's the guy you want, but on the other hand, he's asking me about how do you set somebody up for a hit? How do you get rid of the weapons? Things that you don't want your kids hearing or your neighborhood priest. But so it was a double-edged sword. But I mean, obviously, I did it. And the day I went to De Niro's hotel and office, the Greenwich, I was going to have an hour with him the first day. It was 12 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, 3 hours went by. He didn't say very much. He was just listening. And a few times I asked him, Mr. D, am I talking too much? He said, no, keep going. And he was like a sponge.
You called him Mr. D?
Mr. D, He kept telling me, call me Bob, call me Bob. He gave me an autograph here too. But anyway, he is signed in a break a leg. Welcome to the show, because I got in the movie then. At 3 o'clock, his assistant had to come in and say, you got to pick your daughter up. He just got so enamored by everything. The very next day, he called me back and said, would you like to meet Martin Scorsese? So I said, you're kidding me, right? He laughed. No, I said, of course I would. Would anybody say no to that? So he gives me an address, and I'm figuring I'm going to a restaurant or a bar or a social club or an office. I go right to Scorsese's house. I ring the bell. This butler comes to the door. I tell him who it is. Brings me in, brings me upstairs to this big, huge living room. It's one of those brownstones. You know, it's 15 million, whatever, 12 million, who knows, maybe more. And I don't know where I am yet. I didn't realize it's his house. I start walking around, and my wife's looking at me. What are you doing? She's sitting in the couch all prim and proper. And I'm like, this is an Oscar. And I'm in this living with Oscars and all kinds of stuff, awards. I turn around, and I don't even recognize him. It's De Niro's there. And he's got like this, almost like a Gilligan type hat on. He probably wears that when he's coming around the city so people don't recognize him as this. And he comes in, shakes my hand, says hello, sits down. Then Scorsese comes down with the troops. He brings his casting directors, and they had me now for several hours. And I remember a few times I'm explaining stuff, and I don't curse very much, but in certain situations, I would slip because now they got my adrenaline going. And I said, you believe this fucking guy pulls up to me and he's about to shoot me? You know, and then I would go, like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to curse, because there's ladies there. And they said, no, please be yourself, be yourself. So they would have me read for parts, I think, so other actors would watch me talk and do something, or and a whole bunch of stuff in the movie was changed. Like a dozen things they changed or used my words. So anyway, I told him how to get rid of weapons and stuff. As a matter of fact, one of the lines was, I said, he first asked, and I said, to see if he was really paying attention, he says, how do you get rid of a weapon? I says, well, we climb up to the roof, we break the gun, and we throw it in the chimney. And he got, and you know, he's that face he has in all the movies, right? You know, it goes like that. And he keeps, I said, no, I'm only kidding. And I told him we go to like a bridge like Cross Bay Boulevard Bridge, pull the car over and throw it in the water, you know, and it's gone forever. Nobody's going in that murky water. And I said, as a matter of fact, if you got some scuba dives to go down there, you could start a war. He changed it to, you can arm a small nation. But he took my idea. Another one was where I had to say where when this Frank Sheeran walks into a room, he's a big guy. He said, he'll walk right down the middle. They part the way for him, and he comes strutting through, and nobody even touches him. So I added, and you see it right in my says, when he walks through the room, it's like Moses when he parted the Red Sea. They put that in there. Another part was with the watermelon, where Jimmy Hoffa doesn't drink. So I had to go through this whole spiel with the Irishman. First of all, be on time. I had to tell him, Jimmy Hoffa doesn't like to wait. And then I added this. As a matter of fact, you be early. No, I said, listen to me. You be early. You know that line, listen to me? Then at the end, they said, I want you to add a line because he doesn't drink. So I had to explain that. So don't drink. I said, yeah, he's an Irishman, but he don't drink. So don't you drink. So now I'm opening up a watermelon. And I'm spiking it with the rum. But I'm not showing that at this point. It's in the script. So Ellen asks me to add this line because Jimmy Hoffa doesn't like watermelon. So they know he won't eat it. So she says, add this one line. But I do. So I went through it. I says, Jimmy don't like watermelon. I get the bottle. I says, but I do. So I just showed exactly what they were trying to portray. They're spiking. If you see that scene, it's hysterical. And Pacino says at the end, he says, you two sure like watermelon, you know, because they're getting bombed. And but anyway, that's how I got the part. I played a hitman, and it was a scene where we kill Albert Anastasia in the barber seat, the famous true hit. And it got really condensed down because it was, if you know the story, he jumped out of the chair and he ran towards the mirror and he broke the mirror. This Scorsese does this like 40 times. And he got tired of replacing the mirror. So they stopped it at the gunshots and then they phased it out. But anyway, it was a great movie to be in. Then I got another one called The Perfect Murder. It's about a true murder out of Las Vegas. And it was Ron Rudin, who was a high-end realtor, ladies' man, gun collector. But he's having an affair or something with this woman. And one of the suspects is this ex-cop who works for Joe Pesci's character, Spilatro, out of the Casino movie. And it's a true story. They think he's the one of the potential murderers. So they come into my bar, and I got to be real sarcastic. And they said, if you want to change any of the script, which I changed a lot, because I'm never going to tell a guy when I pop out of the back seat of the car, put a gun to his head, keep your hands on the wheel 10-2. Who's going to say something? So I changed it to keep your hands on the wheel or blow your brains all over the dashboard. They loved that. And they told me to be a little sarcastic. And I had to make fun of his initials. He wore a big ring that said RR on it, Ron Rudin. So I had to say, what does that stand for? Rough, rough. And I added the rough, loud, loved it. As a matter of fact, they overdid it, saying it was so good, this and that. I says, I wasn't really acting. I said, don't call me for Hamlet. If you want me to be a corrupt cop or a gangster.
It's too bad. It's too bad Scorsese and De Niro and them and Jazz. It's too bad that you came around so late in their career. Their careers are winding down. You might have been a regular, just like Pesci was, if you started with.
You never look. You never know.
You play. You do them. You do them well. Didn't you meet? I thought I heard on one podcast, and I had lunch with him 2 or 3 times, and I never asked him. Didn't you meet Armand Assante? That was
you. We Armand and I hit it off. I think we both consider each other friends. As a matter of fact, him and you met Craig too. Craig DeFrancia.
Yeah.
Yes, he. It's funny because I was doing the Mob TV show, the talk show, and Craig told me he got called to a reading for a movie with Armand. And he said, I didn't get a second call back yet. I thought I killed it, this and that. So I gave Armand the call. And I said that I got a dear friend. I said, I'm not asking for a handout, but just know he's my friend. I know he's good. You know how it is. If you think he's as good as the next guy, whatever. I said, just give him a good shot at it. So he gets called back to Armand's house. They do the scene. He gets the part. 2 or 3 weeks later, he gets called back again. They have another scene they want to do at Armand's house. And Armand has Craig direct the scene. That was nice. Now this got him a whole new direction, behind the camera, directing it. And when he came on my show, he brought it up. So it was funny that I was able to say, well, I made an offer he couldn't refuse, kidding around. But Craig deserved it. He's a very good actor, and he just didn't get his signature yet. Hopefully in the life or whatever you guys are doing together, he'll find that signature role like Paulie Walnuts or one of these guys that aren't really great actors, but they were lucky enough to get it. But Robert De Niro, and last time I was with him, we sat down on a couch. My wife was there, and I told him, I said, you could play Junior Persico. I said, that would be perfect. It's not an over-the-top part because you're not going to be working to death. He's in jail half the time, And he looks at me and says, you think I could play him? I said, come on, Mr. D. I told you, of course you could play him. I mean, you play anybody, but that's perfect. I've got a picture that I already sent to Terry Winter. He thought I sent him a picture of Robert De Niro, but it was Junior Persico, and he was making a face. I'll text it to you just so you see what I'm talking about. He thought it was him because we were actually talking about casting, who could be good for what. And, there's a few others I came up with, and they're talking about who I'm going to play. And I could say that. I have a few in mind, like my Uncle Albert. If you remember, he was knock-around guy he's throughout the whole story. Or my father. And Terry liked that. He said the public would eat that up.
Yeah,
They
but
know
you
it's
need the part that's going to take you through the whole series.
yeah. Well,
I
I
don't
don't
think
have
your
to be the
father would
lead.
do that.
Well, my father would be no, he'd be in and out of it a lot because, right up until my going to court through the war. I mean, I was going over to my parents' house, sleeping there at night. I mean, he would give me. There was a point in my book. I hope I don't get choked up talking about it because it kills me. When he told me to go to Florida, he says, "Get out of here. Go to the condo. Just get out of New York." And I looked at him and I said, "Dad," I said, "would you leave your guys in a fire?" He looked at me, says, "It's not the same. That's not the same." And he walked away from me, almost like he knew he lost me. It's not, and he's so right, you know. But no, there's going to be three major stars. That's going to be me, Greg, and Linda. Let's just say whoever they are. Then there's going to be a lot of middle of the ground. You'll have the Greg Juniors, the Joe Sapp, Johnny Sapp. You'll have probably Linda Vecchio at some point, Vic Arena, Junior Persico, all these other that don't have to be heavyweights. I don't think I'm going to be elite. I don't think I should be. I think they're going to have somebody that's going to sell tickets. But yeah, I do want to be throughout it. I think my father, my Uncle Albert, without overwhelming, I could be Wild Bill. I told Craig I think his best role is going to be Alley Boy. He looks like him. They're, the age is right now. But again, that's casting directors. And here's another good thing Terry told me. When, I thought, because I watch a lot of TV and I see a lot of New York movies and scenes and TV series are filmed in Canada because it's a lot less money. They give you all these incentives to come and film there. And it really looks, I guess it's Toronto or one other city that looks just like New York. It's built the same way. Did you ever see Suits?
No.
You should watch that. It's a hell of an entertaining series. But they filmed only the opening episode in New York, the rest of them in Canada. I asked Terry, I said, are we going to do this like in Canada or in studio? He says, we are filming in New York, New Jersey, Staten Island. He says, everything's going to be authentic. So that goes to budget. So he's got big plans. And one of the things was mentioned when you and Jimmy are doing that walk talk down the boardwalk, passing Nathan's, you think we're going to set up just a set for that? You want to see the seagulls. You want to get the feel, hear the ocean. You guys like melancholy, how it's coming to an end. We know we're going to be getting.
Is your best friend Jimmy going to be in that movie or just his character?
Well, his character will be in it. If he wants to do something, he'll certainly have that opportunity. I don't know if he would want to, and not that he's against it, but like, I don't. It's not that easy to get in the front of the camera, you know that, and just start talking and then portray. And he's a smart kid. He's a great athlete. He could do anything, but I don't know if that's his cup of tea.
Let me ask you a question now. I don't even know if you know the answer. I don't know the answer. And I don't ask any questions. Like I said, you got powerful people helping you, and I'm sure yours is going to get done. But when they go to shop this thing, do the doors open because of who they are? In your case, you got some heavyweight people, or do you need a major star attached to your project along with that?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, but it depends on, like Terry, he's at the top right now. He's at the top of the mob food chain. So they're going to, with his resume, Wolf of Wall Street, Boardwalk Empire, Sopranos, Tulsa King, he stepped down from the Tulsa King to do this. Yeah, they're going to open the doors to him. And then when they read the pilot, which I've heard from a few people, they just can't wait to see where it goes, or it's, in one person's case, I don't want to mention his name, but it's somebody we spoke about today. One of the actors said it may be the best script he ever read. Just a pilot.
Wow.
He just could not wait to see where it goes. There was a little humor, a little violence, the sex. It just was really, well, where are we going with this, Uh, and now when he goes in, I would imagine he'll have his thoughts of who he would like to play who. And that may be part of the ongoing negotiation. Will you have him? Let's just throw this out there because everybody knows he wanted to play Greg. So you have Stallone? You have him signed? Is he going to sign to do that? And that all makes it more and more power. And then it's the budget, how much they're going to put in. I'm lucky because Joe is ready to put in significant money, but it's got to be, you want to be partnered up with somebody like Netflix or Roku or Hulu that will make sure you're not throwing your money away.
I'm surprised you never. Well, well, maybe I shouldn't even say this, but Village Roadshow, we Village Roadshow is was the one that was going to do my movie until COVID coming in. Then option on my story ran out, and I didn't re-sign. But the largest distribution of TV and movies, mostly TVs, and my friend called them by accident. In fact, one of the writers, and they said that when you're ready to go, which we just about are now, contact us. But you never mentioned Village Roadshow because I think they were willing to put up half the money for my thing. But it sounds like you're ready to go.
Well, and the reason I'm talking more and more about it, I was reluctant to talk about it. I didn't know if there would be problems with, if you're dealing with two different companies and you want to keep it quiet. There's a lot of silence in this all for some reason. But Terry finally told me, like, I was doing a podcast that reaches out to a good part of England and Scotland. He's got like 1 million viewers, whatever it is. Very hard to understand the fella that I was talking with, but the show was good. So anyway, I asked Terry, can I put it out there? And he says, you could let them know everything. We are moving forward. It's in development. He says, don't tell them everything. Tell them I'm on it. So I said up until 6 months ago or so, it was sort of let's keep it quiet. I'm just waiting for the day they're going to do a press release and say they need me in California or wherever to go sit down. That's going to be a great moment, of course.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the same call. And it's like I text you that time. In our future lives, things took place immediately. And now you're in a situation where it's wait.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a very slow process. And I told people that would say, how come it's not a movie yet? This is the great. The stars have to align.
Yeah.
You got to get groups of people that are all have the same interest. You got the producer, now you got the writer, now you're going to need a star. You're going to need a company like Netflix to say, oh, this is great. We got it all set up. We're going to do, and a showrunner. But we're there. We're there now. I mean, the stars aligned, and now it's just a matter of closing it somewhere and like I said, getting that call.
How do people get? Because we never talked about this. Your mob show. How do people find that?
Well, here's the thing. It was on Plex TV. We had 2 seasons. When we started with Terry on the script and everything and working together with him, we sort of put that on hold and just let the reruns keep going. So Mob TV was at one point a sub of Plex TV. Neither one of them are that well known. Plex TV is an up and comer. They've got a lot of stations like Johnny Carson, Lucille Ball, old stuff that's not real expensive. So he started there. Now he merged it with his other company called Infamous TV, because now they're doing conspiracy theories and things like that too, along with mob stuff. But one of the companies that he's talking to now not only wants my story, they also want Mob TV. They like Mob TV. That was my idea. I said, there's TV for everything. There's white TV, woman TV, black TV, this TV, that TV. There's no Mob TV, and people love it, So he went ahead, he started doing it. And Terry Winter became his partner on that. And now when they're talking to them about it, they would like to take both. So that means Mob TV could someday be under Roku, Hulu, Netflix, or one of those major dealers, Paramount, Max. because these are the ones he's talking to, but one of them wants both. So that means I could resurrect the talk show again too. But you were coming on. You were. We had 10 people for the third season. You were one of them for sure. Another one that I was going to have on for sure was I forget her first name, but Gigante's daughter. She's
Rita.
out there. Yeah,
Rita.
Rita Gigante. Yes, yes. But I had a nice little list of people, and that we do it. We'll continue. We'll do it. And everybody that comes on is, well, mostly everybody is either promoting or just wants to come clean, or like I had an FBI agent that just wanted to talk about the FBI, how they fell apart, how they're not the same organization. He doesn't like them. He's embarrassed he was an FBI agent. That's pretty powerful stuff for an audience to hear from an ex-agent himself, and he was on my case. Because of the corruption and everything, it just put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths.
My whole life, both of us, my whole life, what I don't understand and what I'm having trouble with now is that I started my podcast because of Frankie Vincent and Frank Collada. They forced me to do this. I think prior to that, in 2019, there must be 5 pictures ever taken of me in the whole world. I just never took pictures. I never got in front of a camera, except for the winner's circle in horse race. Outside of that, I just never was in front of a camera. And so when I started this thing, I was terrible, and I still am terrible. I'm not comfortable doing this stuff. I like to listen or ask me a question, then I'll ramble on, but I'm not good at this stuff. And now I see that I'm on a network, YouTube, that in the last 6 months, they're cannibalizing each other. Everybody's fighting with everybody, and I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I'm hoping that my TV series goes.
Yeah.
Because
let me say something. First of all, you're better than you think because you're easy to talk to, and that's what I was told when I was sitting there interviewing. It wasn't like forced questions; it was almost a conversation, and you flow with it very nicely. So don't knock yourself. I enjoy the show. You're doing great. If that means anything to you, I mean it from my heart. But the second part you said about it's jealousy. Everybody wants to be the kingpin of everything. They want to be the king of YouTube. The reason I didn't do a podcast is what you just said. I didn't want to get on there and start fighting with people. And people thought it was maybe an egotistical answer. I says, I'd rather go on Mob TV, which is real TV, a step above YouTube. Even though YouTube's good and it's making people money, whatever, or getting your point across, I bypassed it because you just said it. About 2 years ago, 3 years ago, as I was getting popular, guys that had no axe to grind with me, guys that I thought we had a good rapport, all of a sudden they start stabbing at you. He's a liar, bad mouth, this, oh, that's not true, this isn't true, that's not true. Like they were there, then telling some of my story on their own.
Yeah.
And you'll never see me on any of these podcasts outside of maybe Greg Sr. talking very badly about somebody. If I feel that way, I'll just push them. I won't even talk about them. I don't need to talk about them if I don't like them. Why even give them the publicity? Outside of Greg, because there's a distaste for what he did and how he went through that life as a legend, and it just got shattered at the end that he was a rap for 30 years. So him, I don't have much nice to say about. But even with that, I will talk about some of the good times and some of the fun companionship we had when we went to the track. It's a man's night out. It was a great night, even though we took the ladies sometimes too. I remember a lot. There's a lot of things I remember fondly. I hate to say that word, but I do. But, it all got shattered. And I didn't want to get part of that. So if I don't like somebody, I'm just not going to talk about them. We'll move on. That being said, there was twice I went on where somebody attacked me. And I got on and I says, I'm going to answer that one time. I'm not going to go back and forth and help boost his ratings. I'm going to answer it so he gets the answer, and the public, who cares, will hear it. And I said it straight, and I stood my ground. I didn't get back on even when they came back again. So here's the other thing. You said it yourself. I don't even know how many podcasts I did. People that are watching without disdain or without jealousy or without whatever, they'll come out and say, this guy has a great story. You could just tell he's not making it up. His story never changes, and I'm honest about there is probably 3%, just like there's 3% degenerate gamblers out of all the gamblers. There's 3% alcoholics out of all the drinkers. There's a percentage that, maybe I was told something by a superior, but he didn't tell me the whole truth. Maybe I was, after 45 years, maybe I forgot the exact night I met Linda. Oh, maybe it was a Tuesday. No, you said it was Wednesday, stuff like that. But you're not going to argue details of a hit that I did and tell me I wasn't there or whatever. Good. If I wasn't there, I wouldn't have been getting life, nonsense stuff. I made a comment in my book that one of John Gotti's friends, this big Russian bodyguard type of guy, and I ran into him. That's another story. But I put that John Gotti, and I don't particularly like John Gotti for his ways and what he did to life. He didn't help anybody. But what they did to him at the end, he was convicted, he's doing life. They put him in this one-man cell for the rest of his life. It was unnecessary. He could have went out in population and just did his time like everybody else. And I was sort of compassionate to him in my book, even though I don't like him, because I said, this isn't right, what they're doing to the guy. I said, they threw in Marion. I guess it wasn't Marion where they put him. This kid got all over the place. He doesn't know what he's talking about. John was in somewhere else. So I answered him through the media. I says, I'm not a groupie like you. I don't study history books. My point was they put him in one of the 3 worst prisons in the country, put him in solitary, and they gave him cancer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was, but so he attacked me on that, and like I'm a liar. Yeah. Because but I ran into him I did the Godfather and John Gotti, Godfather and Son, the documentary, and we went to the premiere, and John Jr. was in there with this big Russian bodyguard guy. He sees me. The Russian guy comes over to me. I'm up on a step, and he's still towered over me. But and this is a good 12, 15 years ago. I was not 63. I was probably 47, 48, and I was in good shape. So I didn't care how big he was. I still was fast with my legs and things like that. And I lined myself up and I ripped him. I knew him. I says, and told him, go away from me right now. And he left. He was coming to shake my hand. I felt bad afterwards. They said the guy was coming to shake your hand because I had people there. My son was there. I was embarrassed that he had to see that. I had some friends there, but I didn't know what he had on his mind, But anyway, so.
Well, one more thing. I know you have to go, but I want to ask you one more question. I meant to ask you earlier. I can't remember, but I remember in the book, and I was very interested in this, and I just can't remember how it ended, that you were going to rob a bank. And I remember you had to knock down cinder block walls to get behind the 1,000 boxes and then cut them open. How did that end?
Well, earlier on, Joe Brewster and I went, and Joe threw a rock through the window, purposely break the window so the alarm would go off and we could time how long it would take for the cops to get there in case we needed a getaway. Plenty of time. It took them like 90 seconds. We would have been in Brooklyn by then. And this was in Queens. So the backup, the vice president didn't even tell the president of the bank. And I was told this, so maybe the president was in on it or whatever. I heard the Vecchio might have been in on it. There's a lot of people in on this thing. It was supposed to be an unbelievably lucrative score. The vice president of the bank puts a backup alarm direct to the precinct without telling anybody. It's almost like he knew. He didn't like that window being broken, or he knew. He put a backup alarm, so we broke the cinder, we got in, and we heard the footsteps upstairs. But they didn't know where we got in from, so the guys got out through the same hole, ran away. 3 of the guys, Joe Brewster, Carmine Sessa, and Bobby Zam, they go to a car that Joe Brewster parked at the farthest end of this strip mall where the bank was. And one of the cops comes back out and he sees a brown caddy pulling out with Jersey plates. And we're all the way in Douglas and Queens. Rosslyn, you know those areas?
Yeah, sure.
They're lucrative areas, even back then. So they pull him over and they see the walkie-talkies. They all got cinder block on them. Bobby has a bump on his head like a golf ball because he ran into a column trying to get away. And we now drive back around, and I remember pulling over to a phone booth and telling Greg, because he's waiting on pins and needles, because I'm going to be there bringing bags of money and jewels back, because I was one of the few with a legitimate license. So that was going to be part of my job. I call him up and I says, Greg, the party's over. He says, what do you mean? You want me to say the bank robbery is over? I said, the party's over. I said, the last people that we wanted to come to the party came in big force. They came in through the upstairs windows. I said, you gotta be. He was pissed off, not asking if anybody got pinched, everything else. So then we go back to the house and we told him that those 3 guys got pinched. None of them did a year in jail. Greg handled the whole thing, got the lawyers on the case. They got 2 years probation. Here you got 3 known wise guys with cinder block, walkie-talkies, leaving this. I mean, that was a sweetheart of a deal. But they were big, big earners for Greg. They were his Shylocks, big Shylocks, and he saved them, just like when he got caught with the fake credit cards, the DEA. He spent 4 hours with the FBI and they released him. And Greg got probation. I mean, the handwriting was on the wall, but everybody was too afraid to say anything because he was such a killer. So it didn't end well. It didn't end well. And I remember Linda used to tell me, first when she asked me if I wanted to be on it, I said, I never robbed a bank before. I'm fucking 19. And she said, oh, yeah, but you're going to make it. They're talking about like $3 million each. And this is in 79, 80. And there's like 8 cuts. There's like 8 people involved. And I'm one of them. And she says, I said, yeah, but I don't want to go to jail either. And she says to me, you won't go to jail. Greg's too smart. He never got caught before. And in my book, I kept saying, she kept telling me he never got caught. Never got caught. And then finally I says, guess what? We got caught. First time. I guess I brought them up.
I know you have to go. I've been watching.
I got another podcast tonight at 8.
Yeah. Before we go, just tell the people again, we're going to put it on, Tom will put it on, but how do they get this? How do they get?
I got my website. It's www.larrymazza-thelife.com. Every book that I send out, I got a bunch of them here. I got to sign in the morning. I sign them every day and send them out. When it does become a movie or a TV series, I don't think I'm going to have the time to sign every book. So I'm not rushing you, but if you want a signature and a little nice words from me of thank you and things like that, order the book. But that's where I self-published it, so it's still in my own printer.
Good. And also, I already mentioned if my thing happens, you already know that you'll be in it. And
so that would be an incredible honor.
I want to thank you so much for coming back on. Well, a lot of people asked me to have you back on. So thank you for that. And go to your other podcast, and I'll talk to you soon. Good luck.
I hope you invite me back. Thank you so much.
See you, Lon.
Bye, Lon.